Second time I'm recording this. Second time. All things have to do a second take for. It's Onward. Welcome everyone to Below Average Film Student, here to give you a below average film review of the new Pixar film Onward. This marks the third film I've watched through the Amazon Early Access Cinema streaming service, which actually it's no longer on the Amazon Early Access. It's moved on to just being normal rental price now. So I guess that makes this just a normal movie review then. Onward is now the 22nd film made by Pixar, the family-friendly animation titan that it is, which doesn't actually say that much, considering the last few films they made have been mixed. Let's just say mixed. Will this one be any better? Let's find out. I love cold coffee. I remember the teaser for this film coming out about a year ago, and when it first dropped, I was definitely part of the hype that made it really big. The mix of the suburban life and Middle-earth setting just seemed really fun. It was a really simple concept that seemed like it gave you a lot of way to have some interesting interactions. It all just depends on how you use the mythology and the fantasy elements. You could play with creature stereotypes and using magic in normal day interaction. It just felt like a very Pixar setting to me. Then the official trailer came out and ooh boy, did the hype die quick. It felt like that entire idea of the magical world mixed with the fantasy world was just completely gone. And instead what we're getting is a road trip with a little magic and fantasy painted all over. And well, guess what we got? The main plot of this film revolves around Ian and his brother Barley. Ian grew up with low self-esteem, while Barley was very outgoing but not very driven to do anything. On Ian's 16th birthday, though, he gets a present his dead father had saved for him, a magic staff and a spell that allowed them to summon their father back to life for 24 hours. Of course, something goes wrong, and only half the dad is brought back, so they need to get a magic crystal so that they can finish the spell. But if they don't do it within 24 hours, they won't be able to see him before he goes away once again. It's not a complex story, but it sets up for some good emotional moments. It's got themes of family, growing up without a father, learning to love your siblings for who they are. And while it's all very sweet, none of it lands for me. While there's this one plotline focusing on family and sibling love, you also have another one going on about Ian learning to use magic and getting more proficient at it and also gaining confidence in himself. And it leads to some quite entertaining and fun moments. But by the end of the movie, nothing really feels fully developed to me. The two arcs really don't play off each other that well in my eyes. So instead of getting this constant development for both, what we end up getting are these fun, small little moments that are heartwarming and emotional, but kind of come out of nowhere with minimal build-up. And then that all accumulates into the final arc where everything feels pretty hollow. The storylines really don't play off each other or intersect very well. So instead of getting these slow little bits of growing development, instead we just get these out of nowhere heartwarming and emotional scenes that come out with no real setup. And this all accumulates in the final arc of the movie when both plotlines are being wrapped up and the endings end up feeling pretty hollow because they haven't been given that development that they fully deserve. I think this comes in part from the characters Ian and Barley. The two of them aren't bad per se, but they feel like they only have a couple specific interactions. Talk about magic, talk about dad, and share a gag. The actual interactions are fairly charming themselves, but at the same time they really don't feel like anything more than just set up for other moments to happen later in the film. I never at any real point feel the actual connection of these two bonding and getting closer together. This is also a good opportunity to address the other big selling point of this film. Ian is voiced by Tom Holland and Barley is voiced by Chris Pratt. And if I'm being honest, I don't think they work that well. Tom Holland himself is fine, it's just he comes off as every other generic Disney teenage voice actor, which is weird because I don't even think he's a teenager. How old is this man? This dude's 23. He's older than me. He looks like 14. What? His delivery and voice acting in the film wasn't bad, but it wasn't anything special either in my eyes. At the end of the day, it just sounds pretty generic. That said, I'm officially convinced Chris Pratt can only play himself. I no longer see him as whatever character he's trying to play, I just see him as Chris himself. Which I guess is an issue when you cast someone more from their name than their actual acting ability. I feel kind of bad saying that because I actually like Chris Pratt as an actor, but I haven't felt like a real shred of originality from him since I first saw him in Parks and Rec. But all at the same time, I think Disney also kind of ruins any actor they touch, so maybe he just hasn't been given that role to prove himself to me yet. The other characters in this film were fine, I guess. I don't hate them. I don't really love them either. They're just kind of there. Looking back on it, the town this film takes place in feels pretty empty. The characters other than Ian and Barley are pretty forgettable and uninteresting, so at the end of the day it really feels like it's just about them. Sure, the main focus of the film is on them and their relationship, but still you have this setting that's suburban and fantasy mixed together. Why not develop it? Make it actually feel a bit real. All the other characters in the movie are pretty forgettable and uninteresting. Just makes most of the film feel pretty dead when the only thing I can recall from it is the van that they spent most of the movie in. I think it goes without saying that the actual animation in this film is amazing. It's Pixar, of course it is. That said, it didn't really leave any impression on me either. Don't get me wrong, there are some beautiful shots and beautiful rendering in this movie, but nothing really stands out to me. Maybe that's how spoiled I am with the Disney and Pixar animation at this point. My standards are just too high now. My actual favorite piece of animation in this film comes at the end, which I can't talk about yet, because spoilers, which I actually think I should move on to, because I don't got much else to add here. So, go to this timestamp if you don't want the movie spoiled. Alright, here we go. There aren't actually too many specific things to talk about in the spoiler section, mainly because it doesn't feel like a lot happens. They find out the gem they were searching for is actually in an old fountain that Barley was trying to save from construction at the beginning of the film, which is cool, I guess. In taking the gem, though, they end up summoning the ancient rock dragon who guards it, which takes the form of rubble from the nearby high school and the face of its mascot, which is a design and gag that I found really entertaining. This specific design is my favorite piece of animation I was referencing, by the way. It's just really silly and entertaining to look at. It also leads up to this emotional moment where Ian gives up his opportunity to see their dad so that Barley can finally say goodbye. It's a moment that's set up from a very somber scene where Ian and Barley were going down the river on a giant Cheeto. And in the scene, Barley mentions that the last memory he has of their father was their father on his deathbed, and Barley being too scared to go in and say goodbye to him. So Ian giving up his opportunity to see Dad so that he can protect Barley while he says goodbye is a really heartfelt and emotional moment that should have left me in tears. If it weren't for the fact that this whole thing was set up in the Cheeto scene not 20 minutes prior to the film's climax. And the scene itself only lasts a couple minutes. It barely gives you time to reflect on it before moving on. So at the end, Ian giving up his main goal of seeing the dad, which is the driving force of the entire film, doesn't have really any impact because the moment and even the relationship between the two brothers is never really fully developed or established. It's all set up through these small little individual little scenes that don't actually have the time to flesh out and make you feel like their care for each other has grown at all. This is also an issue with Ian's magic, as in the final fight against the dragon, he uses every spell that he's learned throughout the film, and he uses each one flawlessly with no problems, but he's only used each spell once properly prior to this part of the film. It really doesn't feel like he should be this proficient. It doesn't feel deserved. And sure, there's the point of it being representative of Ian himself. It's not as much about the magic as it's about his growing confidence and him becoming the person he wants to be. So then why wouldn't you go all the way and fully flesh out that idea? Why wouldn't you take the extra time to properly develop one of the main themes about the movie? Why half-ass it through these individual silly little scenes that don't actually lead up to any proper payoff. I guess at this point I'm starting to sound like I'm beating a dead horse, so to summarize, my main issue with the film is that none of these payoffs feel fully deserved because none of the plot lines leading up to them were fully developed, leading to a rather empty and unsatisfying ending. Oh, and before we wrap up, let's just talk about this because it was the big controversy around this film. The lesbian cop. She was fine. She had like one throwaway line that was inconsequential. It's nothing to start a fuss over. But I think we were all kind of expecting that. It's Disney. They've never shown us in any time within the recent years that they're actually willing to put their necks out like that. Onward is the first animated film of 2020 that I've seen. Might also be the first animated film of 2020. I'm gonna have to double check that. And for what it is, it ain't that bad. It has some fun moments, some heartwarming scenes, and the themes themselves aren't that original, but that doesn't mean it's bad to see them again. Sadly, in my eyes, it doesn't do much to stand out. Most of the themes are underdeveloped, leaving most of the emotional stuff at the end of the film feeling pretty empty and underdeveloped. I'm giving Onward 2 out of 5 stars. It's not the worst thing you can watch, and you'll probably enjoy it, especially if you're watching it with a family. It's way more worth the $5 rental fee it is right now instead of the $20 it was a few weeks ago. That said, even though it sounds like I'm being really negative on the film, I did enjoy it well enough, so maybe my rating will go up in time in retrospect. Who knows? Honestly though, I'd say just go watch an older Pixar film, like Toy Story or Up. Both of those films do themes that I'd argue are pretty similar to Onward's, but significantly better developed and more heartfelt. Thank you all for watching. If you saw Onward, leave your opinions down below, and if you enjoyed, leave a like and subscribe. That way you can see when my next video talking about Emma by Autumn D. Wilde comes out. Emma is the last of the original 4 Amazon Early Access videos that I plan to watch, so after that, I don't know, maybe I'll watch Bloodshot like I've been recommended. If you have any ideas for other films you want me to do reviews on, leave some suggestions down below. I'll also leave my Letterboxd and Twitter accounts in the description down below so you can see my opinions on films that I haven't put in review format. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you again next time.